Hello and welcome back to JM Football. These are your Week 12 NFL Power Rankings. My name is Justin Penik. Just there. That's my last name. Nice. And then Dalton Feely. It's because I was ready. You know how receivers, you know how receivers, run with the ball before they catch it.
Right. They take
Kansas
their eyes
City
off.
Chiefs. Shout out. You know how defenders run with the ball before they catch it.
Yeah.
I ran with the ball before I caught it because I went on to your last name, took
Right.
my own last name for granted. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone who celebrates it from the United States of America.
Gobble,
and if
gobble.
you're not from America, tough. Dalton,
Football.
these are our power rankings. You know the drill. We start off with the Caleb Williams-ville. We're talking a lot of top teams.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of roll through some of these bottom tiers pretty quick. Caleb Williams-ville, we have the Carolina Panthers at 32, the New York Giants at 31, the Chicago Bears at 30, the New England Patriots at 29. The thank you next tier. We have
Shout out Ariana Grande. Don't you skip it. Come on.
I'm so excited to talk about these top teams.
I know.
The thank you next tier, we have the Tennessee Titans at 28, Washington Commanders at 27, the Arizona Cardinals at 26, the New York Jets, big fallers down to 25. Can I be honest? This is where the Jets should have been all along.
Their defense had been too good. Now we're seeing it like, okay, the offense is like really, really, really bad.
So they officially bench Zach Wilson. They move on to Tim Doyle.
Nope.
And
Tim Boyle. We talked about this because it's like
Jack
his name
Doyle.
Jack Doyle, Tim Boyle. His name's Tim Doyle is a better name than Tim Boyle. We were talking about this like a 10-minute rant yesterday, so it's kind of funny that sorry. But
we did a whole hot topics video. I started a new show. We started a new show on JM Football called Hot Topics, and we talked about what the Jets should have done at quarterback this year. So we talked all about the Jets QB situation in that video yesterday. So go check it out. We have the Packers at 24, the Raiders are at 23. Let's move to the mid-man month here. We're powering along. We have the Atlanta Falcons at 22, the Tampa Bay Bucks at 21, the Colts, your Colts, our Colts at 20, the LA Chargers fall to 19, the Saints are at 18, the Rams are at 17. Dalton, your Colts are 20th. Now, here's the thing. You can look at their record. They're 5-5. There's a lot of teams. I feel like there's some teams that are ahead of them that have worse records, right? The Rams have a worse record. Do the Saints have a worse record? Right. The Chargers have a worse record. Your Colts are 5-5. They're on the outside looking into the playoffs right now. They're not a good team, but they could make the playoffs. Or will they make the playoffs?
Let me read. So they're not a playoff caliber team. Like if you're looking at like these 7 best teams in the AFC, the Colts aren't in your top 7. But for somehow, first-year head coach Shane Steichen has led this team into a potential playoff run. And it's kind of crazy. You're missing your starting quarterback. Your starting running back had not played in the beginning of the year because he was holding out for a new contract. It's been the Michael Pittman show at the wide receiver room, who's been fantastic. Josh Downs has been a pleasant surprise, of course. Alec Pierce, who's played better than a statistics show. O-line's been somewhat of a jumble. We're starting to get back together on that O-line. And defensively, run defense without Grover Stewart has been very shaky. Pass rush has been pretty darn good, but the secondary, that secondary is horrendous. Linebacking room is good. Now, doing my brief recap of that, right? Do I think they make the playoffs? That schedule is interesting. Bucks, Tennessee, Bengals without Burrow, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Vegas, Houston. Out of those 7 games I just read,
they could win all those games, or they could win none of those games.
Those are winnable games.
They are winnable games.
So I think my thesis statement is,
I think the front end of that schedule is easier than the back end.
Depends on which Atlanta team you get.
Right.
Depends on which Vegas team you get. Depends on which Houston team you get.
So what's your thesis?
I think they will be the 7th seed of the AFC and make the playoffs because this schedule is a very favorable schedule. It depends. I think it comes down to 2 things. One, does Gardner Minshew choke? Like the Carson Wentz effect back when Carson Wentz was the quarterback with the Colts and when they played Vegas late in the year, lost that game, then went into Jacksonville and lost. Number 2, can the secondary hold up defensively? Because it's a really bad room in the CBs and the safeties. They've been playing up recently, but I'm still really worried about that.
2023 Colts, or are they the 2022 Giants? I had that thought, and I'm a Giants fan. I was behind that team, and hey, I do think, like, put a gun to my head. I think the 22
are better than
the 2022 Giants would beat the 2023 Colts.
I would agree with that.
But kind of teams, taking advantage of favorable schedules with iffy offenses and iffy defenses and kind of just doing what they got to do to win games and put themselves in situations to win games. That's what those two teams are doing.
For the Colts, this was supposed to be a rebuild year, and to be competitive in Steichen's first year as a head coach without your starting rookie quarterback is very impressive.
Right. Which, hey, Brian Dable first year last year, it was kind of
Very
like
similar.
very similar talking points.
Yeah.
We have the Chargers at 19. They continue to fall, even though it's like, man, well, Herbert's good. The offense is good. They lose games the same way every single week, and they choke it away. And it's either for one reason or another. It's either the defense, or for this week, it was 4 dropped balls in some really, really key moments. Did you figure out which drop was the costliest?
So, yeah, between the AFC West battle between Quentin Johnston and MVS, in terms of EPA lost, the Quentin Johnston play was worse in terms of EPA expected points added, which turns into loss. Yeah, because
Dalton, you asked me as a joke this morning, you're like, you could do a video on like your opinion on like which drop was the most costly, and I'm like, that's not an opinion. Like you could actually find data on which drop was the costliest.
But I think the logic was that MVS is, if he catches it, it's a touchdown. The Eagles have time to score, right? Whereas Chargers is like he might have scored and kicked the field goal, go to OT.
So Johnston's drop was more costly than the MVS drop in two different games.
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, the Chargers, we were hoping that they would figure it out. And I feel so bad for Justin Herbert. I feel bad for Mahomes too. We'll talk about it later. But Justin Herbert, man, he looked like, if you're watching that game, he looked lights out. And he got no help whatsoever. Whether it was the drops in the sun by Keenan Allen and the rest of the receiving core, Donald Parham had a big drop on 4th down, which could have led to points. I feel like I saw a tweet, Chargers Twitter, that every drop they had lost them points. There could have been points lost on those plays because a couple field goals set up, whatever. Chargers 23-20 in Green Bay. That's a game you gotta win. I'm sorry. When the Chargers scored a touchdown and took the lead late in the 4th quarter,
Green Bay
looked great. And I said to my dad, I turned to my dad watching the game, like, I bet you my life savings the Packers are going to score a touchdown this drive.
Oh yeah, youngest team in the league. That Green Bay team has really not looked very good, and they've had a lot of injury problems themselves. And you talk about the resources that have been poured into LA between high-value draft picks and Quentin Johnston being a first-round draft pick. Hey, let's help out Justin Herbert. Well, we're dropping footballs there. Think about how much money was spent on that defense to allow touchdowns late, just consistently. Brandon, and again, it falls down to Brandon Staley's a defensive coach who does not have a good defense, and I think that is the telltale sign of you should be gone.
I really
can't win close games.
I really thought after Sunday's game versus Green Bay, I thought that was it. I thought that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Another blown lead.
Yeah.
A game you should have won versus a team who's I don't think is nearly as good. Offense that hadn't turned over the ball for the first time since week 2. Chargers couldn't force a turnover against that Green Bay offense. They lose to an offense that lost Aaron Jones early in the game. Ridiculous. I think my final point on the Chargers, I'm looking at the standings, right? It's funny to see that they're in last place with the Denver Broncos now on a 4-game winning streak and the Raiders led by Aiden O'Connell. But I'm looking at point differential, and that doesn't tell you the whole tale of every game, right? But I see a lot of green at the top of the standings. Sure, makes total sense, right? The Los Angeles Chargers are the only team to have a positive point differential, not be first or second in their division. And the only quarterback that they beat was the Kirk Cousins early in the year, week 3.
The only starter.
It was 0-2 versus 0-2. Chargers won that bowl somehow, and then the Vikings turned it around. Chargers have since then. Crazy.
Yeah. Let's move to the playoffs. Why not, Tier? You have the Denver Broncos, Jake Storielli's Denver Broncos going up to 16. Yeah. They got a big win in prime time. The Bengals at 15, they lose Joe Burrow for the year. The Vikings at 14, they lose. Vikings played a better game than the Broncos, and it's honestly a talking point of the Broncos, where Broncos are winning despite not playing great, especially not great offensive football. I want to talk about it for a second. So the Vikings are at 14. The Steelers are at 13. Breaking news, Matt Canada fired today. The Seahawks are at 12. The Texans are at 11. The Jaguars are at 10. Yeah, so I want to talk about the Broncos just for a second because I want to mention them only for a second because they're on a winning streak, one of the hottest teams in the NFL, just by a win-loss record-wise. Towards the beginning of the season, their offense was the ones that were like, oh my God, well, look at Russ making these explosive plays and making these throws, and it was their defense that was terrible. And now it feels like the pendulum has swung the other way, where the defense has been pretty darn good. Despite, I can't tell you, besides Justin Simmons, who's in the secondary, Patrick Surtain's in the secondary too.
Right.
Baron Browning is one of their linebackers, but I can't really tell you, who's good on that defense. Like and this could be my own fault. I don't really know who's like good player, who's like a good player on that defense.
Yeah. I'll give you one though.
Yeah.
It's a recent guy out of college, Nick Benito, Oklahoma.
Yes, the edge rusher.
Yeah, he's been pretty good. Continue. Sorry to interrupt.
So, ultimately what I feel like Russ has been doing on the offensive side of the ball is protecting the ball, keeping them on schedule, and not having a lot of negative plays. He has been doing some of the magic stuff of avoiding sacks and extending plays, and him and Cortland Sutton, when he extends plays, has been really, really fun too, and that's been happening the last couple of weeks. So I want to see more from the Broncos before we like really dissect them and break them down, but those are my Broncos thoughts. Offense was really good towards the beginning of the season. It's kind of slowed down. Russ has kept them on schedule, prevented mistakes, not taking a lot of sacks, not throwing interceptions, and defense has really picked it up.
I mean, it's that Sunday night game versus Minnesota. Minnesota looked like the better team in terms of moving the ball downfield, getting a couple stops, whatever. But they had 3 turnovers. That's the biggest difference of the game right there. They couldn't punch it in. They had too many turnovers. Denver turns the ball over 0 times, which is their biggest saving grace in that point, keeping the ball safe. Like you said, Russ has been very efficient. He's got the 3rd highest quarterback rating in football right now this year, which is crazy. It's Brock, Tua, and then Russell Wilson. So Russ has played a safe and efficient way. I still think they're kind of not letting him cook, if you will, in terms of like him throwing the ball downfield as much as he has.
And
I
have stats on that. 4th highest open target rate, 65.7% in a game this season, week 11. This is according to Next Gen. Basically, Russell Wilson's 6th game this season targeting receivers out of the backfield at a 30% plus rate. No other QB has more than 2 such games. So if you watch that primetime game,
a lot of Javonte,
even on that game-winning drive.
Yeah.
And hey, take what the defense gives you. If Brian Flores is going to try and get aggressive, and if I need to prevent the big play while also trying to blitz Russell Wilson, where Russell Wilson's just going to be like, I'll just take this check down that's right in front of me, and that's what worked. And that's not even just a 1-game thing. It was Wilson's 6th game targeting receivers out of the backfield at a 30% plus rate.
And I will say it's not a bad thing if you're able to win that way. Like, if you're winning games and you're being efficient and
they're staying on schedule and they're preventing limiting mistakes.
We're good. It's just the problem when you're losing games and you're doing like that, you're eating too much clock, you're not scoring enough. That's when it becomes a problem. Right now, you're winning games, 4-game winning streak. Good for you, Denver.
The Bengals are done, right? Without Joe Burrow, very QB-needy, dependent team in Cincinnati. It's not like you have like the 49ers, which they're not fully QB dependent, where you can have an offense that could be efficient. The Browns are another offense that is not QB dependent. Right. I think the Bills are very QB dependent, even though
the Chargers are QB dependent.
Chargers are very QB
Chiefs
dependent.
Chiefs are QB dependent.
Chiefs are very Chad Henne comes into the playoffs, looks pretty good.
Not the same team this year, but
right. Yeah, the Chiefs this year are QB dependent. That's going to lead to our talking point when we get to Lombardi Land. So Bengals are done. Steelers fire Matt Canada. And I think finally losing that game to the Browns, where the Browns are starting DTR and they don't even do anything on offense either. I think finally, like, we can just recognize that, the Steelers have a good record. Hell, they could even somehow win the division. But I think they're probably going to make the playoffs, right? Maybe going to make the playoffs.
The Colts might jump them. I'm being serious. I mean, I'm wearing a little bit of the home fan flag, but still, like, they're not great.
Right. Colts are playing in a easier division than the Steelers, and the Steelers probably still have more divisional games coming up. But here's my point. We've talked about the Steelers this year in a very passive way, because you and I didn't really want to say when they're winning games, it's like, oh, but we hate them. It's like I don't want to sit here and poo-poo a team that's winning games.
100%.
I finally feel like I could do that now that they fired Matt Canada and now that they lost the way that they did to the Browns, scoring 10 points.
Listen, Penik, it's the first time since 1941 the Steelers have made an in-season coaching change. 1941. So for things to be this drastically bad to make a change, I think that's a symbol. It's like, wait a second, something's not going right. We saw Najee Harris at his post-game interview after losing to the Browns. He's like, I'm going to say verbatim. I'm not going to say exactly what he said. But it's like, this is not how we're going to win games. Like, this will not work. This can't sustain how we've been achieving our goals. And they've been trailing every game. They trailed that every game. They have been outgained every game. They put up 64 yards in the first half. They had 9 punts. Pickett threw for 106 yards.
How could you sit there and say that, oh, this is a good team. I can maybe. How can you sit there and say that?
Because they don't turn over the ball much, and they force turnovers on defense.
Come on.
That's what it is. That's all that it is, Justin.
And for all the credit that Mike Tomlin gets, and again, this is what we've talked about the Steelers on this show this year. Oh, give Mike Tomlin credit. Somehow churns out wins and somehow gets a team to a point where they could get a victory, blah, 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 blah. But for all the credit that Mike Tomlin does deserve in keeping teams like this, he's also responsible for the offense.
Yes.
And the offense the last couple years, even the last couple years of Ben, was not good. Right. It's been really bad. It's been the same thing over and over and over again for the Steelers. So for how much credit Mike Tomlin deserves for keeping what is a bad football team in games and keeping a bad football team playing competitive games in November and December, which, hey, Giants fan, my hand is up. I haven't had that. I've had that for 1 year since 2016, and I want it every year. So in a way, I'm envious of the Steelers, but also at the same time, Mike Tomlin is responsible for the bad product that is his offense every single year. And I feel like that part of the conversation constantly gets ignored, and it's very frustrating to me. Because why isn't that talked about?
Because it's quote unquote his not side of the ball. It's not his side of the ball, and people are
You're
like,
the head coach.
He's the head coach. You have to do every part: offense, defense, special teams. You're 100% right. I do agree with you that he does get.
You hire the coordinator, and even let's just. It's not. Don't just put it always on the coordinator. Even though, hey, you're offense coordinator, defense coach. It's your offense, but the head coach should still. If he knows that something can work, or if he wants to put his stamp on something, the head coaches have done that before.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. Seahawks are at 12, Texans are at 11, Jaguars are at 10. You feel like we need to talk about any other team there?
Just real quick about the Seahawks. I am worried about them a little bit. Like, they have a massive game coming up Thursday night, Thanksgiving night. Versus the Niners, they win that game. They're both 7-4. They have the tiebreaker right now because they've only played it. This will be the first time they've played each other. But Geno Smith has that injury on his arm. I think it's an elbow injury. They called it, not a tricep or anything. They called it an elbow injury. He gets hurt. Drew Lock comes in, throws a pick. Geno comes back in, drives them down the field, sets up another potential Jason Myers game-winning field goal. Could be back-to-back weeks where they do that. They beat the Commanders 29-26 a week prior, and Myers misses that field goal. First time he'd missed a field goal since week 4, snapping a 15-straight streak of making a field goal. I'm a little skeptical on the Seahawks. They have not looked like that same team offensively they had earlier in the year.
Offense is the key for me.
Yeah, like they held the Rams' offense to 123 yards through the first 3 quarters of the game. The defense looks relatively good. Like, Boyd Mafe has had an unbelievable season. Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, Bobby Wagner, amazing. 12 straight seasons with 100 tackles. Jordan Brooks. Like, they have all these guys on defense that have played really well. But that offense just doesn't look right. And we're talking about the Steelers, about how when an offense doesn't look right, like, you got to make a change. I don't think the Seahawks are there yet. I don't think there's a change that needs to be made. But Geno Smith has looked really shaky.
Yeah.
They just lost Kenneth Walker to an oblique injury, so now it's going to be Zach Charbonnet, the rookie, coming in.
I like him, though.
He looks, he's going to be, I think he'll be okay. But
yeah, he could be better. Walker's a little bit streaky.
Right.
Walker's a little bit of a
everything outside
home runner bus guy, where Charbonnet could be more north and south and maybe keep them on the schedule a little bit more. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. But every week last year, Dalton, I did some shorts. I do shorts for JM Football. I like them. I like doing voiceovers.
Big short guy.
You probably see them on this channel. Hopefully you do. And every week last year, like, there would be like, oh my God, Geno Smith made this jaw-dropping throw. And he's made a few of them this year where it's like you really got to look to all 22 to get an appreciation. Hasn't really happened this year. Hasn't really happened. JSN hasn't transitioned as smoothly as I maybe thought that he would into the Seahawks offense. Obviously, you don't expect the world out of a rookie wide receiver, especially one that didn't really play during the 2022 season at Ohio State. But I expected that transition to be a little bit better. I thought he'd be a little bit pro-ready to fit right into this offense. I think a good Seahawks offense. So the offense just hasn't been as explosive. They haven't been as efficient as they were in 2022. Let's move to the playoffs. You better be there, Tier Dalton. We have the Bills at 9, the Browns at 8, the Dolphins at 7, the Lions at 6, the Cowboys at 5.
The Lions scared me a little bit this week. I'm going to be honest. I still think they're a very good team. You're able to have one of those weeks. What a comeback. You're down 12 points with 4:20 to go. Put up 2 touchdowns, win that game at home. You get the safety at the end, Aiden Hutchinson, strip sacks, Justin Fields. they scared me a little bit. Now, does that, I don't know for you, let me ask you, do you think that game scares you a little bit, changes the needle about the Lions and where you think they rank in the NFC or the NFL?
Shout out to the Bears for really respecting the tank. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. No, man, because if they won. They won. Where the Lions, I've been waiting for that Lions game besides the Ravens game. I've been waiting for that Lions game to be like, yeah, like the Lions could have one of these games. And that's what happened to them last year.
Yeah.
Is that they would look good, offense would look good, and then they would just have a game that's a complete dud. They haven't really had that outside of the Ravens game this year. Now they won it. They shouldn't have won it. But at the end of the day, they're still running the ball really well. They're scoring points really well. And if anything, it's the defense you got to look at because Justin Fields did look really, really good in his return.
Yeah, the Lions had a 1.8 win percentage at the point of when they came back down 12. Yeah. They had the ball for 19 minutes and 36 seconds of that game. 2-to-1 ratio in terms of time possession. The Bears controlled that game from the first snap to basically the last snap of the game. The only problem was the scoreboard didn't represent it. Yeah. Shout out to the Lions, 8-2 for the first time since 1962. Like, that's awesome. I'm very happy for Detroit fans. They need something like this. Goff, I think the sneaky thing, 3 picks. He's only done that for the 3rd time in his career. 2nd time against the Bears. Really odd. So when that was when he was with the Rams, the Sunday night game versus the Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
That was a fun one. 15-6, I think. Anyway.
They're 8-2.
They're 8-2. Amon-Ra has either 100 yards or a touchdown in every game he's played in this year. Montgomery scores the walk-off, quote-unquote, touchdown versus his former team. I mean, the Lions are fun.
They have the second seed. It's not the 49ers.
No. 8-2.
They have the second seed, and the Eagles lose 1 game. Did the Eagles play the Lions this year?
No.
So the Eagles lose 1 game, and there's a tiebreaker scenario. So
there's a chance.
That's crazy, man. Good for those Detroit Lions. If they lost the game, then it's like,
big difference. Lions, they might be the 3 seed.
Lions dud game, right? Lions dud game, and it's here we go, we go. But they won the game. They found a way to win. Your big players make plays, and that's what Aiden Hutchinson did at the end. Where are we gonna go now?
We're going to Lombardi Land.
Land. We have the Chiefs. They fall to 4.
Tough one.
The Ravens are at 3. The 49ers are at 2, and the Eagles are at 1.
I wanted to say a quick question to you. We were talking about it in the office. I think it's a great point to bring it up here. Mark Andrews goes down for the Ravens on Thursday Night Football, as does Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. 2 brutal injuries to these AFC North competitors. Does the Mark Andrews injury change how that offense looks, and is it going to be as nearly as efficient as it once was?
I think the Ravens might be not done as in like, they're not going to make the playoffs, or not done that they can't win a playoff game, but I had possible Super Bowl aspirations for the Baltimore Ravens, heading into this. Especially they beat the Cincinnati Bengals. They continue to look good. They continue to kick ass. And man, losing Mark Andrews now, I could be thinking like 2021 and 2022, like perception of the Ravens offense.
Yeah.
Where it's like Mark Andrews or bust in the pass game. But I still kind of think that, man, he has 6 touchdowns on the year, 544 yards, 12.1 yards per reception. That like he's on pace to do what he always normally does, except this year he's been healthy. He's played in 10 games, 45 catches. So, I don't know exactly what that's on pace for. It's going to be close to 90 catches, which would be 4th best in his career. He's going to probably get over, close to 1,000 yards, which he's only broke 1,000 yards once, and that was 2021. It would have been the 2nd best receiving output that he put in his entire career. He probably breaks 10 touchdowns, which he had 10 touchdowns in 2019. That was his career best. So Mark Andrews was on pace for a 2021-like season where he was an all-pro. And I do think that the Ravens' ceiling of being a Super Bowl contender with Mark Andrews going down, I think that's kind of shattered.
I still have them as a Super Bowl contender. I think that defense is really good. I think my biggest question now for the Ravens is within that passing game, red zone passing. Because Mark Andrews has 6 touchdowns, as you said. Lamar's thrown 13, so he basically has half their receiving touchdowns this season. Who is going to step up in the passing game in the red zone? Because they've been running the ball very efficiently. Gus Edwards has 9 touchdowns the last 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Most during that span. Second most rushing touchdowns in football right now. So the running game has been fantastic. That's how they've been scoring. That's great. Who in the receiving game is going to step up in the red zone? It's going to be Zay Flowers. He's got 1 touchdown. Odell's got 2. He got banged up last week. Nelson Aguilar is the next highest at 3 touchdowns this year for the Baltimore Ravens passing game. Bateman's got 1. So one of these guys, maybe Isaiah Likely comes into as a tight end now. We're going to see. I'm very curious to see who steps up in the passing game.
I like Isaiah Likely. No pun intended. But he's very small. Very, very small. But I like the fact, this is where the Ravens take Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar. I don't know if they were the same draft. I think they were a year apart. I think Kolar's younger. I think Kolar was taken a year later than Isaiah Likely.
Okay.
Charlie Kolar has 1 catch on the year. I really like Charlie Kolar. He's coming out of Iowa State, I believe. I really liked Charlie Kolar. And I thought, this guy can be a tight end. Taken by the Ravens in a very crowded, what is a crowded tight end room with Mark Andrews. So now we get to see, curious draft decisions by the Ravens stacking up on all those tight ends, especially when Likely's not really a blocker. I think Kolar is an okay blocker, and then obviously Mark Andrews being one of the best, all-around tight ends in the NFL. So now we get to see the very interesting tight end room that is Isaiah Likely, who could be a very good receiver, and Charlie Kolar, who also can be a decent receiver while also being a blocker. Interested to see how that kind of pans out and how much trust does the Ravens offense put in those 2 tight ends. And also, let's be real, Odell Beckham Jr. should be, if he's got his head screwed on right, and if he's got his shit together, and if he's healthy, and if he's whatever. And I'm saying this as a former Giants fan who's followed Odell these last couple years, who knows he's an egotistical asshole. If Odell Beckham Jr. has his head screwed on right and he's healthy, he should be more of a weapon than what he is right now. But they've been using him a little bit more the last couple weeks I've seen.
Okay. Love it. I do want to mention, changing gears here, Monday Night Football, where the Eagles beat the Chiefs.
Yes.
Fantastic game. People thought that could have been an offensive game. This is one game where I was like, okay, I thought it was going to be more of a defensive battle. I had 24-21 Eagles, 21-17. So it's a very similar range. I will say the Eagles continue to win games where they don't look 100% on the offensive side of the ball. It's their 4th victory when they're trailing at halftime. They come back from a 10-point lead against the Chiefs, shut out the Chiefs offense in the second half. The 3rd straight game the Chiefs offense has been shut out in the second half. Eagles are 9-1 again for back-to-back years. First time since my Colts did it in 05-06. 06 was a good year. 06 was a good year for the Colts. I'm just saying, but I'm not saying, but I'm kind of saying. First time the Eagles beat Andy Reid. A lot of things going right for this Philadelphia team, man. I know you don't like to hear it as an NFC East guy, but these Eagles find ways to win.
No, I agree, man, because I've said it all this year whenever we do talk about the Eagles. The fact that they're not playing their best football, whatever that may mean.
They're not best as their best.
Because they have such a talent. They have the most talented roster in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Agreed. They're more, and the reason why they're more talented than the 49ers is because of the offensive line. Where even 49ers fans will tell you they have questions about that offensive line. Mm-hmm. But the Eagles' offensive line and defensive line, it starts there. It starts in the trenches in the game of football, but really it does. And that is where the Eagles shine on both sides of the ball. And then you could see how it's just infectious, how it makes everybody else look better from there. And Eagles, them not playing their best football, the fact that they're still winning games and they're still putting together good performances, solid performances, that's why it's that's why I think they're number 1, and that's why I think they will always be in this top 3 territory, even if they lose a game here or there, because of how talented that roster is. Yep. And again, they're not playing their best football, but they're putting together wins and they're stacking wins.
A.J. Brown has 1 catch for 8 yards. And you think if A.J. Brown has a catch for 8 yards, they're going to lose that game. Number 1 receiver has been an MVP candidate this season. Does really nothing. Chiefs do a really good job limiting him. Eagles still win that game. Shout out Chiefs defense. They did a fantastic job. Spags, once again, that defense played fantastic, especially in that first half of the game. They got to Jalen Hurts, I think, 5 times against an Eagles offensive line, which has been really, really good this year. But I'm really worried about this Chiefs offense, man. 26 drops, which leads the league. MVS has a big one, which obviously would have resulted in a touchdown. Justin Watson has a couple, but one on 4th and 25, which would have converted on 4th and 25 with under 1:30 to go. He drops one there. Chiefs lose that game. Andy Reid punting on 4th and 4 from the 39-yard line with 9 minutes to go.
Kelsey had some drops plus a fumble, a really, really costly fumble inside the red zone, which I do think the Chiefs would have scored on that drive, and they continue to go up from there. So, I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned about the Chiefs. I'm really not. Now, you could say that you're concerned about the Chiefs, like let's say in the playoffs, where if the lack of receiving weapons, but we also saw them. What weapons did they have last year?
Yeah, I mean, MVS had played much better last year.
Juju is the one that's missing here, and I like Rashee Rice. Kadarius Toney actually is doing something in the offense this year versus last year. He was just kind of like a gimmick player, and I still think he is a little bit of a gimmick player too. But for how much is being talked about the Chiefs' skill position players, and they are dropping the ball. They got to fix that, and it's a huge issue, and it will be a huge problem. It will be a huge issue in the playoffs. But it's like, well, what's really different about this Chiefs team? What's different about this Chiefs team from last year is that their defense is playing better. Chris Jones is playing out of his mind.
The defense has been amazing.
Chris Jones has been playing out of his mind, man. We have like 3-4 tackles for loss last night. It's crazy stuff. So that's really what I think is different. I know there is cause for concern with the Chiefs' skill position players, but what's different from last year?
I think 2 is Juju, because Juju almost went 1,000 yards last year. People forget. And the other one, which is kind of funny, do you remember at the end of the year, Jerick McKinnon almost had like a streak of like 8 or something games, I could be wrong, of receiving touchdowns. He just found one. He had, I pulled it up just to make sure, he had 9 receiving touchdowns last year. Jerick McKinnon had 9 receiving touchdowns last year. I'm not saying they should use him more, but I mean, if the passing game is struggling, he should be involved. He's been playing third downs. And I think Pacheco should, they have to run the ball.
Yes.
So he looked fantastic. 19 for 89 last night. He hates the ground. You could just tell the way he runs, they do that.
He hates everybody.
He hates everything on the field. And that's awesome. As a running back to have that mentality, not afraid about taking hits, and you're giving those hits, it's fantastic. And I think that can help the passing game, because
it will.
If you're running the ball well, you're going to have those safeties creep up a little bit. It gives you the deeper opportunities if you really want them. But you got to catch the ball. You got to catch the ball.
Yeah, I do think they need to lean into the run more, and they did it in the Super Bowl. They just did it, and I was there at that game with Joe's McFly, and it was the Isaiah Pacheco show more than the Patrick Mahomes show for the majority of the game. And even last night, the Chiefs were more efficient running the ball. 75% of first down series that started with the rush eventually gained a first down versus 62.5% that started with the pass.
And usually it's flipped too, which is kind of funny that's the case for the Chiefs offense.
Right, but if you're going to be playing Patrick Mahomes, the main priority is to stop the big play and to stop the quarterback. Absolutely. So Dude, Pacheco's a good running back. And if that is open for you, you should continue to take advantage of it. So, Dalton, any other thoughts as we head off for this week's Power Rankings?
Ravens, Chiefs, if they played right now. Ravens and Chiefs, if they played right now, who would you take?
Chiefs.
Okay.
I would take the Chiefs.
I would take the Ravens 3-0.
Unlikely.
Isaiah Likely. I'm kooky.
27-yard passing play to Isaiah Likely on the final drive. Justin Tucker hits a 63-yard field goal to win.
People are saying.
Some are saying. All right, that's this week's Power Rankings. Like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully you enjoy. Let us know how much fucking idiots we are. If you disagree with us, that's a tough way to end it. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Peace.